It's a brand new year, and it's a brand new day. Millions of people have made New Year's resolutions. Have you made one? Thing is, by now, I bet a lot of people have already broken those resolutions. And I don't make resolutions. That's the best way not to break a resolution. It's by not making them at all. I did have a friend that made a New Year's resolution every year. And one year, he made a resolution to do one push-up, and then each day he would add another push-up. So on the second day, he did 2. On the third day, he did 3. By the end of March, he was doing 90 push-ups a day. At the end of the year, he was doing 365 push-ups in one day. Now, that's a lot of push-ups. At the end of the year, he's done over 60,000 push-ups. By the middle of the year, he's in great shape. By the end of the year, he was really stacked. Now, that's something I just couldn't do. Not that I can't do a push-up. Of course I can do a push-up. I can do 30 of them in a day. I could probably even do 365 in one day if I tried. But I couldn't be consistent about doing those push-ups. Something would invariably happen. My wife would be late from work, and I would have to make dinner, or the kids would need to take baths, and eventually, somewhere around the middle of January, I would just give up and stop doing those push-ups every day. And that happens to us when we make New Year's resolutions. We have this great dream, this great ideal, but when it doesn't happen, we're just left with a sense of failure. We're kind of left with despair over breaking those New Year's resolutions. Think back to that chalkboard. I'm sure all of you could come up with a sentence or a word that you could put in there. Some sort of ideal that you thought you would have accomplished by now. We all have that. We all have dreams, don't we? And we all like to dream big. But then something always happens and reality breaks in and we just don't fulfill that. And when we're left without fulfilling that ideal, we're left feeling jaded. There is a jaded cycle. It all starts with an ideal that we want to accomplish, some great dream that we have. And we all dream big, don't we? But it doesn't even have to be a big dream. It just has to be an ideal, something that we want to accomplish in life. But then at some point, pain happens to us. Reality breaks in and disrupts our plan. It could be the pain of not saving enough money to buy that car you want, or it could be the pain of a broken relationship. Whatever it is, when that pain intersects our life, if we're not careful, it can lead us to cynicism and failure. And when this happens to us, it's usually not our fault. But even if it is our fault, we eventually want to join back in that cycle. We have big dreams and big ideals we want to accomplish again. And then we get angry when pain of reality hits us right in the face. And then we become cynical and we become hardened by failure again. But we keep running this cycle over and over and over again. And the more we run the cycle, the harder the crash is. And then one day we finally crash and we're jaded. And when we're jaded, we no longer want to invest ourselves in life. And we're left only with despair. So why do we do this? Why do we put ourselves through this cycle over and over again? I think there's something inside of us that drives us to do this. Some idea that we can make it perfect. This pursuit, it's a pursuit of happiness. We all feel like we have a need to be happy, and we want to accomplish that. And that drive, it's an emotional drive. Now, emotions are really a fact of life, and we were made in God's image. So if we were made in God's image, then He must be an emotional creature just like us. And if you look through the Bible, you can see plenty of times where God responds emotionally with His people. Whether it's being angry at the Israelites for grumbling at Him in the wilderness, or whether it's Jesus weeping over His friend Lazarus. When God did that, He entered that jaded cycle. In Genesis, we see that God made a place for us so that we can have fellowship with Him. Genesis 1, verse 31 says that God saw all that He had created, and He called it very good. Now, those two words, very good, they don't mean what we usually think of them. You know, like if you say to your friend, "How you doing?" and they respond back, "I'm doing good." It usually means, "I don't really have the time to stop and talk to you, so I'll just give you these few words." No, when God said that the world was very good, He meant that it was perfect. In fact, the name of the garden that He created for His children was called Eden. And that name Eden has now come to mean an ideal, perfect place. And because of that perfection that He gave us, He intended great things for us. Over and over and over again in Genesis chapter 1, God keeps telling us that He has given us. He says, I have given you. And then He tells us all the great things He's given us. And He gave us this near perfect place, knowing that we would probably screw it up. So Adam and Eve enter the equation. They're there in the Garden of Eden, and they're enjoying perfection. And as happens, reality breaks in, and they do the one thing God asked them not to do. They eat of the forbidden fruit. And now all of a sudden, the reality of sin has entered the world, and Adam and Eve have entered the cycle. Pain is an innate consequence of sin. And no matter how much we try on our own, we can't avoid sin. Sin came into the world with Adam and Eve, and with it came pain. Sin is all around us. It's like a cancer that spreads before we even realize it. And because sin is so prevalent in the world, pain is so prevalent in the world as well. But it wasn't always like this. Adam and Eve once lived in a place where there was no pain and there was no sin. But when they sinned, even God Himself felt that pain. And when He felt that pain, He had the choice whether to continue on that cycle and be cynical. Every time we sin, He's given that choice, whether He responds to us with wrath or whether He extends hope. Now, even back when Adam and Eve sinned, He extended hope to them. In the same curse that He gives to Adam and Eve and to the serpent for sinning, He also extends a hand of hope. When He curses the serpent, He tells him that there's an offspring of the woman who will crush his head and he will bite his heel. Now, He's speaking of Jesus Christ there. God made this perfect world for us, and He gave it and gave it and gave it to us. And we accepted it, but then we rejected Him, and we sinned. But He kept giving and giving and giving with that same hope until He gave the one thing that you would think He could never give, when He gave His only Son, Jesus Christ. And when He gave Jesus to us, that's the final thing that He could give to us to release us from this cycle.